Want to show support for your Philly teams? Check out PhillyGoat.com. They have all of your needs covered, whether it's Sixers, Flyers, Eagles, Phillies, Union, Philly boxing, Philly culture, Philly pride. There's something for you. They have tees, hoodies, hats, any color, any size you want, including kids. Go to PhillyGoat.com and use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. That's PhillyGoat.com. Be sure your shirt has the authentic goat on the sleeve and use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off your order. That's PhillyGoat.com. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Back to the Future, the podcast that takes a trip down Philly sports memory lane. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. It's been a while, and if you've listened to This Day in Philly Sports History, which you should be, but in case you haven't, you'll know that we've sort of shifted gears a little bit with both podcasts, and there was starting to be a lot of overlap between This Day in Philly Sports History and Back to the Future. So in order to keep everything fresh and relevant for you, I've decided to sort of pump the brakes somewhat on Back to the Future, but it doesn't mean it's going away. And my plan is to use Back to the Future as more of a special episode platform where I'm going to do interviews. I'm going to do a lot of the season previews, draft roundtables, things like that. Some more fun things that are more longer form that we can use. And it's not necessarily This Day in Philly sports history specific, but allows us to get those other things that we like to do here on Back to the Future done. So as always, thank you so much for your support. And if you're not listening daily to This Day in Philly sports history, check it out on the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont, or anywhere you get your podcasts. We've pretty much the shows now are anywhere between 12 and 30 minutes, and a lot of the same content you're used to getting on Back to the Future is what we're doing here. So This Day in Philly sports history, wherever you get your podcast. Now, as far as Back to the Future, again, I have a lot of things lined up, so be sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube. That helps out with the algorithm, helps us grow and get these things. But very, very excited for today's episode, or tonight, depending on when you're listening to it. And in honor of Black History Month, there is, I'm having to sit down here with Brian Michael, who is the curator for a legal part, a exhibit that really showcases the legacy and just the rich history of the Negro Leagues in Philadelphia. I was able to go and see the exhibit a couple weeks ago, and it was phenomenal. And I'm very excited to have him on here in a few minutes to talk about it. While I get everything set up, stay tuned. But again, this is the first of many of these special events, special episodes, special things that I'm going to be doing here on Back to the Future. So while I get Brian set up into the interview room, just hang tight, and I'll be with you in a couple of minutes. All right, everyone. I am here with Brian Michael, the producer of A League Apart, the exhibit on the legacy of the Negro Leagues in Philadelphia. How are you, Brian?
Great. How are you, Jim?
I'm good. I'm super excited. I've been kind of pumping this up for the past week or so since I was able to come down and see the exhibit with you. And it's phenomenal. But A League Apart. So tell us sort of the story and the background. Like, how did this come about and become the exhibit?
Sure. So it's a museum type exhibit on the legacy of Philadelphia and South Jersey Negro Leagues, right? So it tells stories of five what we call barrier breakers, and that's Octavius Catto, Lloyd, Ed Bolden, Dick Allen, and Monet Davis. And the exhibit was conceived by a University of Arts graduate student named Caroline Quick. She had a senior or no, a graduate project, and she had to put together a plan um, for an exhibit on social justice, and she chose Philadelphia Negro League baseball. She um, went to University Arts, like I said, which is right around the corner from the store I own, Shive Vintage Sports in Center City. So they sent her our way for some history background. We helped her out, and once she was done with the project and got an A on it, we looked at the book, which was the final project, and said, "Let's make this happen." Right, this was around this time last year, and we started a fundraise. She did the design work. I did a lot of the writing and photo research. And again, around this time last year, we started raising money. SABR, the national organization for baseball research, donated with their local grant. We had Sean Foreman from Baseball Reference make a donation as well. And a lot of folks just that are interested in Negro League history, Philadelphia, or history in general, also made donations. So that really, got things going and got some momentum. And we were fortunate enough to get everything together. And last summer, July and August, we were up in our first installation over at Cherry Street Pier in Philadelphia. So we were really excited to get things off the ground. That was a 2-month run, and now we're up and running at Camden County College in Cherry Hill. So we're there through May 20th, and we've added some more features on South Jersey since we're across the river, as well as some exclusive memorabilia that one of their professors, Dr. Kelly Jackson, donated to the exhibit. So we have that on display, autographs, postcards, a big autograph bat with over 50 Negro League players. So we're gaining momentum, and we're excited that it's, like I said, off the ground. But we wanted to continue to, all the way at least through 2026 when the MLB All-Star Game is in town, and there's all sorts of festivities as well. So we're really excited of where we are in the first year of doing this, and even more excited for the potential over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. And like I said, I mean, I've learned so much, and I consider myself a history guy, former history teacher, big sports guy. And there was just some things that I found that I was just like, oh, didn't even know happened or existed. So those five barrier breakers are some pretty big heavy hitters if you really follow and get into the Negro League history in Philadelphia. So why were those five chosen as the focal point of this exhibit?
Oh, great question. And that's really one of the very first discussions that Caroline and I had when she came over to our store to discuss this and really kind of put some pillars in place about what this exhibit's about. I think she knew some Negro League history, but I also kind of had the idea that we need to tie it to the current day and the present. We've worked a lot with the Anderson Monarchs through Shibe, which was Monet Davis's Little League team. So we're familiar with all the great stuff that they do, and kind of knew that they were, a part of this legacy, and saw that story. So we kind of offered that to Caroline. We've also talked about Dick Allen too, because he came, right after integration of Major League Baseball. So he was a really important figure for Philadelphia, the Phillies, and the fans of the city. She had the first two, I think, Catto and Bolden. I talked to her about Monet, and then just kind of, I think Dick came in organically, and then when we moved to Camden County College this year, we wanted to add a South Jersey component. So we have a whole new chapter on South Jersey, and the barrier breaker there is, of course, Pop Lloyd, who many consider the greatest shortstop of all time, not just in the Negro Leagues, but equally as good a coach and mentor to young ball players as well. So when it came to South Jersey, that was easy as well to add him. And the idea is these five people had tremendous obstacles in front of them. They overcame them, right, in their own special, unique way. And we want to tell those stories, right?
Mhm.
The obstacles are the tragedy, but the overcoming them is the inspiration for today. And we see it continuing, like I said, with the Monarchs and people like Monet Davis and plenty of more kids and anyone that we hope to inspire with the exhibit.
Awesome. Well, let's just continue down that road a little bit because to me, the way the display is set up, it definitely follows a timeline and really like the way things sort of progress, not only for baseball in Philly, but specifically for the Negro Leagues. So talk a little bit about Octavius Catto and what what is it about his legacy that we should remember? Because to me, being a history guy, I know a lot of his legacy expands beyond baseball. So what should people know about him?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, most people know Ben Franklin and would probably consider him Philadelphia's number one citizen. Octavius Catto is number two, right? And
Mhm.
nobody knows about him, unfortunately. He had a statue built finally for him maybe about 10 years ago at City Hall. But yes, you're right. There's so many things that he was known for. He helped recruit soldiers for the Union during the Civil War. Obviously, he started the Philadelphia Pythians baseball team, which, was important not just for black ball players, but society in general. It gave them a space to come together and talk about issues like integration and segregation. Um, and from that, he helped lead the integration of the Philadelphia streetcars. So he fought against the segregation of Philadelphia streetcars. He also fought for voting rights, and that's how tragically he was murdered on South Street on Election Day when he was just, I think, 34 years old, 32 years old. He did so many great things for the city. He was also president of the Institute for Colored Youth, which is now Cheney University, right? So he did so many great things for the city, just like Ben Franklin, not just for the black parts of the city, but the entire city.
Right.
So I think he should be remembered for that. And, you know, hopefully people remember these names when they come to the exhibit. They're not going to remember everything. We talk about these five folks in particular. We also tell the story and the context around them, baseball in the post-Civil War days. And the fact that Catto and his team was the first to apply to what was known as the Pennsylvania Association for Amateur Ball Players to have his team registered in the league, but he was denied. And that set the color barrier really for baseball up until Jackie Robinson, and this was 1867, right? 1867.
Right.
Jackie
Mhm.
came in 1947. So 80 years later, all started with Catto and his Pythians Ball Club.
No, and like to me, the thing that this is really the first time you start seeing too, and think about our society today, how we live and die by our teams, especially when the Phillies are making their run to the playoffs and World Series, the Eagles are good, and just how sports are sort of woven into the fabric of society. And it seems to me like Cotto was one of those first guys that was like, hey, this is important. And I think for him, because of everything he did, I think it was a lot more just trying to fight for the equal rights. And now that slavery and the Civil War are over, what can we do? And sports, it kind of coincided with the popularity and the growth of baseball, I think.
Yep, absolutely. And, just to kind of transition to the next kind of chapter, Ed Bolden did the same thing. He was a modern day Octavius Catto in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. He brought the team together. He created his own corporation to support the team and raise money and deal with all the costs of traveling. Um, you know, but also he brought together Black society at the ball fields. They had big events before the Philadelphia Stars games, which was one of the teams he started, in addition to the Hilldale Daisies out in Darby, PA. Um, but they would have parades, they would have guest speakers. The games were a social event, and Ed Bolden really carried on that tradition that Octavius Catto started with the Pythians, with his two teams, first the Hilldale Daisies, and then next Philadelphia Stars, as you can see
Nice.
here. Um, and he really, like I said, put a modern spin on it in terms of fundraising, advertising with newspapers, having a field, right? Having a regular access to a field, which was tough for black ball teams, in addition to uniforms, equipment, all those sorts of things, which he really was a professional in doing. He was a postal employee for 40 years, so I think he had this organizational skills that you didn't see with other teams.
No, and I'm glad you brought him up next because to me, everybody knows the Philadelphia Stars. I think if you ask anybody who follows the history of baseball, they'll say, "Oh, Philadelphia Stars. They were the Negro League team in Philly." But I think a lot of people don't know a lot of the names that go along with that, and certainly don't know about the Hilldale Daisies. So I think for him, he is a very key piece to Negro League baseball in Philadelphia. Like you said, continuing that legacy that Cato had
Yeah,
started.
and not just Philadelphia, but the whole country, because he was instrumental in starting some of these leagues, the Negro National League. They linked up with Rube Foster out in the Midwest as well. So he was big in getting the leagues organized, which was tough because they were not very organized, and players jumped teams all the time. So, like you said, you don't often hear of superstars on the Stars. But in their first year, they won the Negro National League Championship. So they did definitely have success with his style of play and the way he put together a team.
No, absolutely. And I think to me, it's just amazing to have like it's one thing to start one team, but for him to have two teams and they both won World Series
Yep.
is
Yep.
just amazing, especially during the time when, like you said, it was so unorganized.
Yep. Yep. But as you mentioned, we do try to bring out some of the stars and daisies and players that shown during those times. We have a pretty cool display on Slim Jones, who was their star pitcher from that 1934 championship series. Really tall guy, so we have a big, measure up to Slim Jones, and we tell his story as well, which was really interesting. And that's really part of this too. All of these stories are fascinating in my mind, and you're a history guy too, um, but they have connection to the present day. So it's important that people understand these stories from the past, and I think naturally through the exhibit they'll understand what it means today, because yeah, as we get through it, people of our parents generation are big Dick Allen fans, right, to get to the next
Yep.
guy, because the Phillies, they had trouble with integration. Jackie Robinson came along in 1947, and it wasn't until 10 years later that the Phillies signed their first black ball player, John Irvin Kennedy. And he wasn't a superstar like Larry Doby or Satchel Paige or Jackie Robinson. So the Phillies didn't dive in with the whole integration thing. It took them another 6, 7 years before Dick Allen came along and really showed the city what it meant to have a black superstar. Right, fans weren't used to this. The front office wasn't used to this. Right, they sent him down to Arkansas for AAA. And he was the first black ball player down there, and just kind of left him there with no real support. And certainly he had issues as they came through the Phillies, both of his stints, and was misunderstood by a lot of people. And I think, again, Philadelphia and the fans and the team may not have been ready for Dick, but Dick was ready for baseball, and
Right.
that's why he was such a fan favorite. I mean, his home runs were mammoth. Everyone from our parents' generation said, he was the guy, just like Ryan Howard or any other slugger, Mike Schmidt, right? Everyone likes that guy, and Dick Allen really won over a lot of fans.
No, and I'm glad you went to him next because that was the next thing I was going to say. Because um, the movie with Chaz Bowman and I think it's 42, right? It's not
Yep.
Yeah, so like you can see what those players had to deal with in Philly. And so do you think anybody else could have done it, or did Dick Allen have sort of that special makeup? Kind of like Branch Rickey picked Jackie Robinson to break the color barrier because he
Right.
knew he could handle it. And he had to have the talent. But do you think Dick Allen was the guy to sort of break that mold, so to speak?
Um, I don't think the Phillies planned it like that. I think they, you know, again, this was well past it. This was 15 to 20 years past Jackie Robinson. They saw a good ball player. They didn't care that he was black, and they just kind of
Mhm.
ushered him in as a ball player. Um, but I think Dick Allen is who Philadelphia deserved, right?
That's a
This
great way to put it. I
mercurial
like that.
guy who, right? We weren't ready for him, but he was there, and we had to deal with it, right? This is, you know, he's a superstar. The fans love him. Yeah, he might be different from some of the other ball players, but right, we got to deal with that. That's what modern day baseball is becoming. And certainly, if you look at baseball today with the international appeal, right, it's whoever can spend the most money and get the best players, obviously,
Right.
is it. So it's an arms race now. But he's who we got, and I definitely think he moved the needle in terms of acceptance. He was the first black superstar baseball player in Philadelphia, so I think that was a really big deal. And it would have been different if it was another player. But again, the Phillies were not progressive at that time to have a Jackie Robinson or plan out, how they're going to do this from a PR and marketing standpoint. I don't think that's what they did at all. And interestingly enough, not to get too far ahead, next week we're having an event at the exhibit um, with Milt Thompson and Sean Foreman from Baseball Reference, and also a panel discussion where we have a representative from the Phillies who's going to talk about, how far they have come. Because, obviously there's a lot more when it comes to making sure players are okay from a mental aspect and things like that. So, the Phillies have really jumped leaps and bounds from those days and actually are a little more progressive than their peers, which has changed, which is a big
Right.
difference from the 60s and early 70s. So I think that's an interesting thing that we'll talk about next week, how different the team actually is as well.
All right, perfect. I'll get more into the discussion next week because I'm looking forward to that as well. But last thing on Dick Allen, do you think he gets into the Hall of Fame eventually?
Well, I hope so. I really do hope so.
I
And
agree.
and yes, I do. I mean, he missed by one vote last time. Um, I think he'll be eligible in the next year or so through one of their new programs. I'm part of one of the Dick Allen for the Hall of Fame groups, and they work really hard on getting him in, and we're all devastated when he missed out right before he passed away, which is a real shame. But they're going to keep fighting for him. Um, like we said, everyone from our parents' generation loves this guy. So Mike Schmidt, Phillies owner John Middleton, they're pushing his case now too, which is new from the past 5-10 years.
Mhm.
Um, so yes, I do think he'll get in. It's a real shame that he isn't already in.
No, I agree. And kudos to the Phillies too, because I know when they retired his number, they kind of broke their tradition where usually they would only retire guys' numbers who were in the Hall of Fame. But I 100% agree that his number did deserve to be retired, and I'm glad they went ahead and did that.
Yep. No, I think like I was just saying, they've definitely come a long way in that, and good for, like you said, John Middleton in particular. I think he led some of that charge for sure.
Absolutely. The Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame has released its ballot for the 2024 inductee class. Go to phillyhall.org/fans voice to fill out your ballot. While not a part of the official voting, the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame is excited to provide this megaphone for fans to voice their opinion. If you submit a ballot that is closest to the official 2024 induction class, you will receive 2 free VIP tickets to the ceremony on November 7th. The deadline to enter is Friday, March 8th. That's phillyhall.org/fans voice. get your voice heard for a chance to win 2 VIP tickets to the induction ceremony in November. Before we get into Monet, I did want to talk real quick about Pop Lloyd and just sort of his story, because obviously he's one of the best to ever play, whether it's Negro or Major League. But talk a little bit about his story and maybe touch on where people might know um, some of his backstory from.
Sure. Yeah. Pop Lloyd, he is a product of what we were talking about, kind of the disorganization of the Negro Leagues, right? He had a career of, I think, 27 years, where he may have played for about 20 different teams, right? So he was all over the place. He played on the Daisies. He played with the Bacharach Giants, which was probably what he was most famous for, down in Atlantic City, right? So, he was in Atlantic City. They eventually moved up to New York, so he was up there for a little bit too. But as I mentioned earlier, he was one of the greatest shortstops ever. He batted over 300 most every year, over 400 a couple years. Um, he was a great teacher of the game. Um, so he would, a lot of times he was a player coach on the team as well. So he would be playing as well as mentoring and setting the lineup and things like that. And everyone respected him. Everyone listened to him. They wanted his advice. They did what he asked. It was a very kind of positive relationship he had seemingly with everyone I've read about. So he was real important kind of in building the foundation of the Negro Leagues. But one of the big things that he was known for is that he helped integrate Yankee Stadium in his discussions with Babe Ruth and getting to the ear of the Yankees owners. That allowed them to play exhibition games in Yankee Stadium, which, as we found out, was highly lucrative. They would play double headers. A lot of the stars. Slim Jones famously battled Satchel Paige in a 1-0 loss in what some consider maybe the greatest pitching match ever, at Yankee Stadium. Right, so it was a chance for uh, people to see the team, and a lot more people to see the teams, and sell more tickets and make more money, particularly on Mondays when the pro teams were traveling. They usually traveled on
Mhm.
Mondays. So Negro League teams would play Yankee Stadium, Shibe Park here in Philly, and that would be a big boost to their revenues. In the 1940s, the Stars regularly outdrew the Phillies and the A's at Connie Mack or Shibe Park at the time.
Mhm.
So that was a big deal for them, and
That's
and
amazing.
that was all Pop Lloyd's doing. And then after his baseball career, interestingly enough, he spent another 20 or 30 years as a custodian in Atlantic City schools. Again, just mentoring young people, coaching baseball. He played on the Nucky Johnson, if you ever seen Boardwalk Empire, right? It was based off
Mhm.
of Nucky Johnson. He played on his baseball team. Um, for many years. And now Atlantic City has a baseball stadium called Pop Lloyd Stadium. So you can still see his legacy if you visit AC.
It's amazing. And just like to have just the wherewithal to have those conversations to even think like, hey, we can play at Yankee Stadium too.
Right. And also to be that person that would say it,
Mhm.
that people would listen to, right? That's why we chose him as one of the barrier breakers, because sure, there was plenty of players and everyone wanted to do more, especially the owners. But he made it happen.
Right.
A lot like Ed Bolden in that kind of organizational context, even though he was a great ball player too, right?
Right. Doesn't hurt.
No, yeah, right, exactly.
So then bringing it all full circle, I think we can all probably think back, and it's hard to believe it was 10 years ago already, but when the Taney Dragons went on that run in the Little League World Series and just watching Monet pitch, um, how big of an impact on just girls Little League in general, the game did that run actually have, and then some of the things that she's done since then.
Yeah, no, I mean it was huge. It was national news. She was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. So, what she has done is incredible. I think, and even just going back a little bit, some interesting stories that we include as part of the exhibit. She wasn't the first girl to play in Little League. We talk about that. Maria Pepe back in 1972 here in New Jersey, helped break that gender barrier in Little League sports. But Monet came through and just kind of kicked the door down. She was one of the best girls to play. She was the first to get a win in the Little League World Series, right? So she was really good. And like I said, the Monarchs continue the legacy, this Little League program down in South Philly. They continue the legacy of the Negro Leagues. They teach the kids about Jackie Robinson. They go on field trips to Cooperstown and Kansas City, right? So she knows all this about baseball, and basketball and soccer because she's a great athlete. She played all the sports down there. So she was such a great role model for young people and old people, boys and girls, black and white, like everyone. How couldn't you get behind and root for Monet? So especially in the Philadelphia area, everyone was rooting for the team. And again, we like winners. Back then we didn't. It was before the Eagles won the Super Bowl, so we didn't really have much going on. And everyone was excited about the. They were known as the Taney Dragons for the tournament, but it was a collection of Anderson Monarch players. So it was great to see them as a team get more publicity. Because she's very gracious and she talked about the players and the program all the time. And, that's exactly what we're trying to do with the exhibit too. Just kind of keep these stories alive and show people the importance today of these stories from the past.
No, and I mean, there's just so many of them too, and I feel they're all intertwined. And we had talked last week just about like how you can go down so many rabbit holes and just
Mhm.
keep looking up people, and like next thing you know, you're like, oh, they're connected to this one and that one, and
Right.
um, what in doing some of the research, I know you said Carolyn did a lot of the research, but with some of the writing and just working with her, were there anything that or were there any things that really surprised you, or that obviously there was people you didn't maybe know beforehand, but anything that really stuck out, like, hey, this is a surprise, like I never expected this in a million years?
Um, Honestly, that Maria Pepe story with the Little League in Jersey, I think was one of the big ones because the Little League national organization had a rule of no girls. And then in 1972, I think it was, New Jersey passed a law that said you can't discriminate against gender. So they signed up, and the Little League had to get rid of their rule. Right. This is like breaking the color barrier in Jackie Robinson. Right. Like this was monumental and really changed the dynamic of sports. Maria is a barrier breaker. Right. Absolutely. So I think that story in particular was really interesting, but also the Stars. Like you said, a lot of people probably know the Philadelphia Stars more than other Negro League teams in the area, which we mentioned because there's dozens besides the Stars and Hilldale Daisies. But they were just. It was interesting to read about Ed Bolden and just how organized he was,
Mhm.
and he did it all himself, all of it, right? Marketing, um, selling tickets, answering the phone, right? Setting the lineup, getting the uniforms, booking um, the venues along with Eddie Gottlieb. And I was really interested in the way he went about his business. So Ed Bolden, um, I thought was pretty interesting too, and it was great over at the African American Museum at Six and Arch. They have a collection, the Thompson Cash collection, two of the former players at Hilldale and the Stars. They donated a lot of the old accounting ledgers and papers and
Oh
scorecards and things
wow.
like that. So I was really able to dive into the Philadelphia Stars and Ed Bolden and his business stuff. So I guess because that was most detailed, I found that interesting. Because talking about a rabbit hole, I'm
Right.
there looking through old pictures and stuff. So it was very interesting.
Oh, I would be reading the scorecards like, oh
Yeah,
wow, he went three
yeah,
for five or
right,
whatever.
right.
So yeah, I'm right there with you.
So
Um,
yeah, no, I think Ed Bolden and Monet, but the best part is anyone can have their own favorite story from this exhibit, or there's so many different ways that it can interact with people, whether it's a young girl playing or an old guy who remembers the stars, or like I said, our parents who love Dick Allen. Um, Everyone picks up something that it's fun to watch folks go through the exhibit and say, "Oh, that's interesting," or "Oh, I
right.
didn't know that," and that really makes me feel good.
Awesome. And that's the perfect segue into the next question. So far, how's the reception been from people that have come and seen the exhibit?
It's been great. It's been very positive. Our first iteration at Cherry Street was great. We got a lot of media coverage over the summer, which wasn't surprising, but it was great to have, and we're um, uh, but also because it was the summertime, we had a lot of international tourists that came to
Hmm.
Philadelphia, and particularly Cherry Street Pier. And as I was writing some of the panels, I was thinking more of a Philadelphia audience, like as in we should appreciate these stories as Philadelphians. We should learn about these people as Philadelphians. So I never really thought about having all the international folks come and see it, and hopefully it gave them a positive, view of Philadelphia, and gave them a little piece of history as well. Um, so far that's been great, and now that we're at the college, and we have new things with the South Jersey chapter and all the memorabilia and autographs. We're excited to have that support of a college behind us. So, like I
Hmm.
said, we have an event next week, so they're helping host it, and things like that. So, you know, we're we're gaining momentum. Right, more and more people are hearing about us, and that's the most important thing. I just, everyone should be aware of these folks or these stories. And like I said, hopefully they come away with one or two things they remember, right? And then maybe go, like you said, down that rabbit hole on their own, right? They don't have to remember everything from this, but a couple of facts that they find interesting or inspirational. Um, that's the whole point.
No, I agree. And I say all the time on this day in Philly sports history, I'm like, I just want to sometimes get the names out there. And
Mhm.
I've been doing the Black History Spotlight, and some of these players, whether they're male, female, like it's just like, oh, like they were great in their day, and it needs to be people need to know about them. So I think what you guys are doing is just phenomenal, getting the word out there. So talk a little bit about next week, the event that you guys have going on down there, and what people can expect, and if anyone's interested in going, what they can do to get down there.
Sure, sure. So yeah, it's been great having a partner like Camden County College for the exhibit to help plan these sorts of events, and have space for the events as well. But next week we're having a discussion on breaking barriers, essentially, and really diving into some of the topics that we discuss in the exhibit, but with local historians and other folks. So, yeah, next Wednesday is the event. It starts at 6:30 at the Cherry Hill campus, and it's going to start with some opening remarks from Milt Thompson from the Phillies, who's an ambassador for the team, and can certainly talk about being a black ball player for the Phillies in the 90s. Certainly working with them now, and kind of speak to that. Then we're going to have after him Sean Foreman, the founder of baseballreference.com, sportsreference.com. He's going to talk about the Negro Leagues are the major leagues. So back in 2020, when Major League Baseball elevated the Negro League statistics to the level of American League and National League. He was part of that effort to gather all the statistics because again, the leagues were not organized. Not every game got recorded. Not all the stats were right. Not all the player names were spelled right or even had the right names.
Mhm.
So it's a Herculean effort by him and all the volunteers around the country to get these stats together. And he's going to talk about that as kind of a keynote. Then after that, we're going to have a panel discussion with a few local historians. We have Courtney Smith, who wrote a book on Ed Bolden. We have Tim Whitaker, who helped write the autobiography for Dick Allen. We have Michael Everett, who's the director of the Pop Lloyd Committee in Atlantic City. And then we have Kenny Johnson, who is coming from the Phillies to talk about, what they have been doing in recent years. Like you said, particularly the Dick Allen um, stuff. So we're really excited about the event on Wednesday. It's RSVP only. You can go to aleagueapart.org, aleagueapart.org to RSVP. And yeah, there'll be food and drinks, and we're going to have some baseball cards on display, some memorabilia on display, and it'll be a good probably 2 hours of baseball history in the city. So if you're interested in baseball history, Philadelphia, South Jersey, want to learn something new, you should definitely RSVP and come on out next Wednesday, the
Awesome. And
20th,
I will
February 20th.
February 28th, and I'll put the link to the website in the description so you guys can just go in, click on that, and it'll take you right there. Um, Last thing, what is sort of the next steps then? I know this current exhibit is until May, I think you said.
Mhm.
Um, what are the next steps after that? Where do you see this going from here?
Sure. Yeah, well, two things. We've been in discussions with a couple venues. So we have some prospective spots for next either summer or certainly next semester if we do a school again. Um, so we do have a few more locations lined up. But like I said, in 2026, we want to have it, a more permanent thing, and we want again to get a lot of those tourists to come in and see it, and then afterwards, like I said, be a permanent exhibit somewhere in the city. But venues, we're looking around different places. Like I said, we did Cherry Street. We're in Cherry Hill now. Just coincidence. But we'll probably look to go to a different part of the city, either west or north, northeast part of the city, because we do want to bring it around and make it accessible to everyone and bring in different groups. Next this week we have a local high school in Jersey coming in for a tour. We want to be able to offer that to different schools all over the city. So look for that later this summer. But also from a content standpoint, we're looking to grow the interactivity of the exhibit. Caroline's original plan had a few additional ideas, some trivia aspects to it, some kind of like passport aspects where you go around to the different spots and have to learn some information. So we have a few other plans in place. So we'll probably end up doing another round of fundraising. We did a GoFundMe last year to get things off the ground. We still have it up. So if you go to the website, aleagueapart.org, you can make a donation if you can't go to one of the events or want to support the exhibit. Anyways, so we'll probably do another round of fundraising to get some more backing for the next iteration and add some of those pieces. So we want it to grow each time, have something new, whether it's the location, whether it's interactivity, and in a couple of years we'll have a full product and who knows? Like I said, the this time around we got uh, memorabilia donated by one of the professors just who reached out to me independently. So a lot of this is coming along organically, right, from the local
Mhm.
um, organizations, whether it's schools or baseball or anything like that, getting the word out more and more. allows it to grow more and more. People, sure, they're donating, but they're also donating time, ideas, um, artifacts. So, just anyone who's interested, we want to get them there and meet them, right? Because this is a big part of
Right.
it, and we want to share these stories with everyone, really.
Awesome. And that's what my last question was going to be. How can people help out? But just click that link down in the description. And if you have time, if you have artifacts or know someone, feel free to reach out to Brian and let's help grow this thing because I think really it's like you said, I like the Negro Leagues are major leagues, and I think it's just such a big part of the fabric of baseball in Philly that these stories need and these players they need to be known by the masses.
Absolutely. And I think I really do want it to inspire people because the stories are fascinating. And I feel like if more people knew about them, they'd have more of appreciation for the city, sports, each other, right? It's
Right.
all very positive stuff that can come out of this, and that's what we've seen so far with the reception in both installations. So we're very excited to be at Camden County College, and we're excited for the event next week and to again interact with people on a personal level.
Awesome. All right. Before we go, is there anything else that you want to share with anybody? I do like that shirt. Is there a place where people can buy the shirt like that?
Sure. Yep. The website. So yeah, we make these shirts from my store, Shy Vintage Sports. They've never been huge sellers, but we do like to do these designs and get them out there. And I was used to creating shirts and telling the stories through the shirts. The exhibit is a new way to do that. So I'm having a good time, learning from the exhibit and building the exhibit because it's another way to kind of tell these stories. But yeah, at the website, you can buy shirts like this. We have hats, we have Hilldale Daisy shirts, we have some books as well. Um, and yeah, the website has all the information as well as some resources you can read about, videos, curriculums for teachers. So we did try to build out the site to be accessible and allow people to learn from there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it. Be sure everybody go check the link in the description. Hopefully, I'll see you at Camden County Community College at the Cherry Hill campus next Wednesday. But I'm telling you, this is a great site. You guys will not be disappointed, especially if you're a baseball fan or, as Brian said, just a Philadelphia fan, just a people fan, a fan of a great story. You're going to get a ton of great stories there. So, again, thank you so much, Brian. I truly appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jim.